All right, so today we're diving into some pretty wild news. Straight from the Hindustan Times U.S. News live blog. November 8th, 2024, buckle up.
Yeah, it's a roller coaster of a news cycle.
To say the least, we've got Trump back in the White House, Prince Harry may be heading for the exit, and a whole bunch of monkeys on the loose in South Carolina.
Sure.
It's like a reality show meets a political thriller with a dash of the absurd thrown in.
Absolutely. It really captures the zeitgeist, this news cycle, a blend of global politics, personal drama, and those unexpected curveballs that life throws at you.
Speaking of curveballs, let's start with a big one, Trump's victory.
Right, front and center.
He defeated Kamala Harris in the 2024 presidential election. And the internet, well, it's basically imploding.
Understandably so, this election has tapped into some deep-seated anxieties and aspirations, and the reactions are immediate and visceral.
You're not kidding. Joe Rogan's already offering advice to the president-elect. Ted Cruz's daughter is making her disapproval known online. And some TikTokers is advising women to dump their Trump-voting partners.
It seems everyone has an opinion, and they're not afraid to share it.
Nope, no filter. Even Harvard and Princeton had to cancel classes.
That's right. Students needed time to process the results.
Wow, talk about a campus-wide emotional hangover.
Yeah.
It really underscores the weight of this election.
Absolutely. And it's not just Americans feeling the impact. The ripple effects are reaching across the pond.
Yeah, like with Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Apparently, they might be considering a move.
Potentially setting up a backup residence in Portugal.
It seems like they're caught in this political whirlwind.
And to add fuel to the fire, the Trump administration might release Prince Harry's immigration documents.
Oh, wow. Adding another layer of complexity.
Definitely.
Okay, so from royal drama, let's shift to policy shifts. One story that caught my eye was about a judge appointed by Trump overturning Biden's immigration policy.
Ah, yes. The one regarding undocumented spouses of U.S. citizens.
Right, that seems like a pretty big deal.
It signals a potential shift in immigration policy under the new administration, and could have significant implications for families and individuals hoping to immigrate to the U.S.
And speaking of potential shifts, what about that 4B movement you mentioned?
Oh, right. The 4B movement, it originated in South Korea. It advocates for a more radical approach to feminism, encouraging women to reject traditional relationships and beauty standards.
It seems to be gaining traction here in the U.S., especially after Trump's victory.
Absolutely. It'll be interesting to see how it evolves within the context of a Trump presidency.
Okay, so we've got political shakeups, international ripple effects, and potential policy changes. But hold on tight because things are about to get a little, well, unexpected.
You mean those escaped monkeys?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Amidst all this serious news, we've got dozens of monkeys running loose in South Carolina.
Yeah.
It's almost like a metaphor for the unpredictable nature of, well, everything.
Right, like trying to make sense of this complex political landscape and suddenly bam, monkeys on the loose.
It's both comical and a little unsettling.
Indeed, and speaking of unsettling, the Hindustan Times also mentioned a woman jumping into Niagara Falls. It happened just days after a similar tragedy involving a mother and her children.
It's heartbreaking and a reminder that amidst all the political maneuvering, individual lives are unfolding, sometimes intersecting with the headlines in deeply poignant ways.
A sobering thought.
Absolutely. Now, before we get swept away by the emotional currents, let's look at the economic fallout of Trump's victory. The Federal Reserve cut its key interest rate pretty quickly after the results came in.
A significant move signaling concern about the potential impact of Trump's policies on the economy.
It seems the financial world is bracing for impact, too. This deep dive is really taking us on a wild ride. Every headline reveals another layer of complexity.
And what's fascinating is how interconnected all these seemingly disparate events are.
Exactly. It's like we're watching a domino effect play out in real time.
Precisely. And the biggest question is what happens next? What are the long-term consequences of this election, both domestically and internationally?
That's what we'll be exploring as we continue our deep dive. So buckle up because we're just getting started. Now, before we move on, I want to hear what's standing out to you so far. What's the most surprising or thought-provoking detail we've uncovered? Take a moment to really consider that because we're about to dive even deeper into this news vortex.
It's interesting we talk about these reactions to the election, right? And it's clear there's a lot of emotion swirling around. We've got canceled classes, relationship advice on TikTok. But there are these other reactions, too, that really highlight the human impact of this.
Right, like with Nancy Pelosi.
Exactly. She's reportedly having a very tough time processing the loss.
It's understandable. I mean, the Hindustan Times even mentioned a really emotional phone call between her and Harris after the results came in.
It really makes you think about the future of the Democratic Party, Where do they go from here? How do they rebuild after this?
It's a pivotal moment for them, for sure. They need to regroup, reassess their strategy, and figure out how to connect with voters in a way that resonates more effectively.
Absolutely. But, beyond the political strategy, you can't help but feel for Pelosi on a personal level.
Yeah, imagine dedicating your life to public service, championing a cause you deeply believe in, and then seeing it face such a significant setback.
It's a reminder that behind the headlines and the political maneuvering, there are real people grappling with these outcomes.
Speaking of grappling with outcomes, what about those Indian Americans reaching out to Elon Musk about H-1B visa reforms? That's a fascinating development.
It is. It seems they're hoping Musk with his influence. And his focus on innovation might be an ally in pushing for changes to the H-1B visa program, especially with Trump back in office, given his past stance on immigration.
Yeah, it makes sense. People are trying to figure out this new landscape, identify the potential power player.
It's like everyone's repositioning their pieces on the chessboard.
Yeah, a giant political chess game.
And as the game unfolds, we need to keep an eye on not just the major players, but also those smaller moves, the ones that might seem insignificant now but could have a big impact later on.
Absolutely. So we've got political reactions, international intrigue, potential policy changes, economic tremors all stemming from this election. But there's this one other thing that I can't quite shake. It's like the elephant in the room, or maybe the monkey in the room.
Ah, yes, the escaped monkeys.
Right amidst all this serious news. We've got dozens of monkeys on the loose in South Carolina.
It's almost too strange to be true, right?
It is. It's like we're trying to make sense of this complex political landscape, and then bam, monkeys break free from a research facility.
A metaphor for the unexpected, perhaps.
Maybe it makes you wonder what else might be lurking beneath the surface, ready to shake things up.
That's a question worth pondering, I think. As we navigate this new era, not just in U.S. politics, but globally, what other surprises await us?
Okay, before we wrap up this part of the deep dive, I want to circle back to that question of long-term consequences.
The ripple effects.
Exactly. We've seen the immediate reactions, the potential policy shifts. But what about the long game?
Well, it's tough to say for sure, but we can look at a few key areas where we might see lasting impacts.
Like domestically, for example.
Right. Domestically, we could see further polarization, increased social unrest as different groups grapple with the implications of Trump's policies.
Especially on issues like immigration and social justice.
Exactly. Those are likely to be flashpoints.
And internationally.
Things could get even more complicated. Trump's approach to foreign policy has historically been more unilateral, prioritizing American interests. This could lead to increased tensions with allies and embolden adversaries.
So a potential reshaping of the global power dynamic.
Potentially, yes.
It seems like we're in for a period of significant change and uncertainty, both at home and abroad.
And amidst all the analysis and predictions, we can't forget the element of the unexpected, like those escaped monkeys, A reminder that even the most carefully laid plans can be upended.
Life finds a way to surprise us.
Exactly. So as we follow the news, let's remember to expect the unexpected.
Okay, before we head into the final stretch of this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought, something to ponder.
I'm listening.
We've talked about how individual lives intersect with these big news events, sometimes in tragic ways. But what about those untold stories? The lives that are quietly but profoundly altered by these shifts in the political landscape.
The ripple effects on everyday people.
Exactly. The families facing uncertainty over immigration policies. The entrepreneurs whose businesses are impacted by economic changes. The people who feel a sense of hope or despair based on who's in power.
It's a powerful reminder that behind every headline, there are countless individual narratives unfolding.
And those narratives, often unseen, unheard. They're what truly shape the fabric of a society.
Absolutely.
So as we continue to follow the news and try to make sense of this ever-changing world, let's remember to look beyond the headlines. Consider the human impact, both big and small, of these global events.
A worthy endeavor.
All right, folks, that wraps up part 2 of our deep dive into this whirlwind of a news day. We'll be back shortly for the final part. We'll be exploring some listener questions and diving even deeper into those untold stories. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the show, everyone. We're jumping right back into our exploration of, well, the human side of this news day. We got a great question from a listener that I think fits in perfectly here.
Oh, yeah.
They ask, given the intense reactions we've seen to Trump's win, how might this impact political discourse and civic engagement going forward?
That's a really good question. And honestly, it's tough to predict with certainty.
Yeah.
But I think we can look at both sides of the coin, On the one hand, This heightened emotion, it could actually fuel more passionate engagement in politics. People might be more driven to vote volunteer advocate for the causes they believe in.
So it could actually be a catalyst for positive change in a way.
Exactly, it could energize the political landscape.
But then there's the flip side.
Right, on the other hand, these strong emotions, they can also make it harder to have those constructive conversations to find common ground.
Yeah, we've already seen a lot of division.
Absolutely. And if those divisions deepen, it could lead to further polarization and gridlock, making it even more difficult to address the challenges we're facing as a society.
It's a delicate balance, isn't it? Between passionate engagement and respectful dialogue.
It really is a tightrope walk.
And this is where I think that idea we talked about earlier, focusing on those untold stories, those personal experiences, that's where it becomes so crucial.
Absolutely, because when we step back from the heated rhetoric and take the time to really listen to and understand those lived experiences of people from all walks of life, all backgrounds, that's what can help bridge those divides and foster a more empathetic and productive political discourse.
I love that we need to both zoom out to see the bigger picture, but also zoom in to really appreciate those individual brushstrokes, the ones that create that bigger picture.
Exactly. And sometimes those individual stories, they can be the most powerful catalysts for change.
Like, think about the civil rights movement.
A perfect example. It was driven not just by those grand speeches and political strategizing, but by the courage and resilience of everyday people, people who shared their personal experiences of discrimination and injustice.
And those stories had the power to move people's hearts and minds in a way that those abstract arguments just couldn't.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a lesson we need to remember now more than ever. As we move forward in this new era of U.S. politics, let's all make an effort to seek out those untold stories, to listen with empathy, to engage in dialogue with open hearts and open minds.
Couldn't agree more, because ultimately it's through those shared stories, those moments of human connection, that's where we can start to bridge the divides and build a more just and equitable world for everyone.
Beautifully said. But folks, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into this extraordinary news day. We've covered it all: the presidential election, the potential policy changes, the social movements gaining traction, the economic implications, those escape monkeys. It's been a wild ride.
It has.
But most importantly, we've explored the human impact of these events, the reactions, the ripple effects, and those untold stories that often get lost in the noise.
Because those stories matter.
They do. And we encourage you to keep exploring these topics, keep seeking out diverse perspectives, keep engaging in thoughtful conversations. Because in a world that can often feel overwhelming and uncertain, it's through those connections, those shared moments of understanding, that we can find hope and build a brighter future together.
So stay curious, stay engaged, and join us next time for another deep dive into the world of news and ideas.
Until then, keep diving deep.